What's up, bro? And thanks for joining me on my new channel for a simple podcast on Mr. Holmes. I'd just like to say that this is the English version of a video that I already rolled in French, and which you can find alongside a bunch of other entertaining videos. You'll soon notice that the landscape behind me won't change much, that there won't be much editing. To put it simply, it will be a simple podcast. Therefore, I couldn't find a name more befitting.
Well thought.
Oh yes, and I'd like you to meet Bonni, the talking bonsai. He's my associate.
No, I'm his boss.
Yes, he is. Now let's go back to the subject of the matter. This movie, Mr. Holmes by Bill Condon, is a pastiche based on a novel by Mitch Collin, named A Slight Trick of the Mind, curiously translated in French in Mr. Holmes and the Bees. If the name Bill Condon doesn't ring a bell, let's say he directed chapters 4 and 5 of Twilight. I didn't even know there was such a thing as chapter 5. And in the starring role, you'll find renowned actor Sir Ian McKellen, whom I really find fantastic, and whom you probably know for his famous performance in a historic version of Macbeth. Alright, it's Gandalf. It's quite an original version of Sherlock Holmes we have here, since it's not an original story by Conan Doyle, but, as we said earlier, a pastiche. But what is a pastiche, you ask? Let's pretend you do ask. A pastiche is when someone writes a story in the style of another author, whilst never crossing the line of plagiarism. At least they're trying their best. In this simple podcast, I'd like to unwind the storyline without spoiling you the script. At least I'll try. And in the second part of the video, I'd like to unwind two themes that the movie evokes. Let's start with the plot then, shall we? In this movie, Sherlock Holmes is 93 years old. It's been 35 years since he retired in his house in Sussex. He is now enjoying the pleasures of apiculture, or beekeeping. Yes, he is taking care of bees in his own home at 93 years old. And in this house in which the stairs are becoming hard to climb, he regularly receives the visit of his housekeeper, Mrs. Monroe, and her son, Roger, whom we might call his current accomplice. When the movie begins, Sherlock is starting to lose threads of his memory. It keeps happening stronger and more often, which will make his deductions even more difficult to make. But that is not the real subject of the movie, and we see Holmes setting his attention on an investigation he made a long time ago, his last one actually, which was transcribed by his friend Dr. Watson in the books he wrote. We understand Watson somewhat changed the truth behind this investigation, and now Sherlock wants the truth to be revealed. He sets sail, or flies, I don't remember, to Japan. There, on the request of a stranger, he goes over the ruins of Hiroshima and digs a bit of hirisancho, which is actually a sort of Japanese pepper, and which I'd probably call prickly ash from now on, as they sometimes do in the movie. Holmes tries a number of techniques to remember this story, which is so important to him for an unknown reason. Furthermore, the young Roger regularly asks him for advice and wants to know more about Holmes, who is his role model. We get the feeling Holmes is frequently inspired by Roger's questions, which help him reminisce, as though he could continue watching the missing ending of the movie that his memory made. But let's say we progressively understand the discrepancy between the story as it was told by Watson and the truth behind this investigation, which shook Holmes enough for him to quit. What makes this movie particularly interesting is the new approach in the character. He ceases to appear as the personification of reason, and we wonder, but why does he currently use his deductive prowess to elucidate what we might call some common household investigations, rather than to solve crimes as he used to? Therefore, his main trait in the movie is less his reason than his feelings and the impact they tend to have on his life. This movie, and probably the book it was made after as well, intends to show the famously reasoning character the limits of this reason which he worships. Now it's time for two other subjects raised by the movie, as we announced earlier, and of which I wanted to talk. And first of all, there's the difference between bees and wasps. Since Holmes in this movie is an apiarist, he's fighting against wasps. Did you know that there are about 1,000 species of bees, whereas there are more than 5,000 species of wasps? Indeed! And should you want to distinguish them, you'd want to look closely at the shape of their hairs. If the hairs are many and look feathery, then it's probably a bee. However, if the hairs are rigid, brush-like and few, then you're probably looking at a wasp. Apparently you could also sort them out by noticing if their abdomen is narrow before connecting to the thorax, in which case it's a wasp you're looking at. And this is probably a better way of getting your answer, since in the case of the hares you'd have to use a magnifying glass, which means the bees or the wasp would probably have to be dead, which is not very convenient for one, and killing one just in order to know its species is not something I would recommend. This movie also reminds us of a useful thing to know about bees and wasps. Bees, when they sting, leave their stinger in our flesh, since their stinger is barbed, whereas the wasp's stinger is more smooth. Well, I mean not barbed. And so the main difference is that a wasp may sting you many times, whereas if a bee stings you, its stinger is going to stay stuck in your flesh, just like a fishhook, and that will kill the bee. And the other subject in the movie which raised my interest is the glass harmonica, also called the glass harmonium, the bowl organ, or the hydrocrystallophone. Yes, indeed, because in Sherlock's Lost Case, at least in Dr. Watson's best-selling novel version, the object of the crime is a glass harmonica. So it's, how should I describe it? It's a piece of furniture which works with a pedal, which is connected to a kind of rotary axis, on which are slipped 36 bowls of glass, crystal, or quartz. And when you humidify your fingers, you can produce quite a harmonious sound by rubbing the different moving glass bowls. You know, just like in those videos where you see people playing the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy with kitchen glasses. Well, it's the same idea. By the way, this is called the glass harp. So how can anyone commit a crime with a glass harmonica is not exactly obvious, we might say. Well, maybe you'll know by watching the movie. It's a bold idea, I know, but because in about 50 seconds I'm about to answer this question, so if you don't want to be spoiled, well then, you know. It's not a major spoiler, but you've been warned. By the way, did I tell you that the glass harmonica was invented by Benjamin Franklin himself? Indeed! And there are quite many pieces of music composed for this instrument. For example, Mozart's last piece of chamber music was composed for this instrument. Here's an extract, by the way. And if you want to listen to more of it, there's a link in the description. So, why is it a murder weapon in Sherlock's case? Well, these instruments were soon to be considered as a cause for insanity for the people who played them. Why is that? Probably because of the lead that the glass bowls would contain. Their users, who kept tapping their fingers on the glass harmonica, would sweat on it and the lead would penetrate their body. You can look it up on the net if you want. Who knows, maybe we'll make a podcast on Saturnism later on. Well, that's all for today. Mr. Holmes, the movie. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to like the video and to leave a comment. And remember, you can subscribe to my channel. There will be more videos of the kind coming this way. Okay, see you in the next video.
Les abeilles